One interpretation that fans have is that Malvo is actually a devil, or a minion of some sort for the underworld. His interests lie in causing mischief, he enjoys it, and with Lester he saw an opportunity to give him a prod, to point him to the apple tree, so to speak, so his victims end up being tempted and make decisions that begin a series of unfortunate events that ruin their lives. There's quite a bit of beef behind this theory. For one, he literally references the Garden of Eden at one point where he says, "I haven't had pie that good since the Garden of Eden." He associates with religion quite a lot, like faking being a priest and using verses from the Bible to manipulate the rich store owner. He tries to kill Lester too in the end when it is all said and done. I don't want to talk about this too much because Malvo trying to kill Lester is something I want to talk about in another video. But the idea of Malvo tempting Lester down a dark path where he loses his humanity but gains the world, gains the girl, money, fame, power, but then that very same Malvo coming to kill Lester could be seen as him claiming his prize. After getting him to sin and lose his way, he now tries to send him to hell. After Malvo shoots 3 people in the elevator, the shot where he watches Lester run away looks pretty spooky, with the bloodstains looking like wings of blood. Even in his death scene, he looks somewhat demonic and smiles at Gus when Gus shoots him, as if he isn't frightened because he will be back, or he is satisfied that he has gotten Gus to essentially commit murder and kill a defenseless man, him now carrying the heavy sin of murder. So looking at Malvo like this, a man who enjoys tempting otherwise ordinary people down a dark path, and maybe even some kind of supernatural entity who is able to do questionable things, like disappear in the opening episode after killing the chief, all of a sudden, his reasons for helping Lester become more clear. What if you're right and they're wrong? As Lester's fish poster says. That's pretty much the question Malvo poses for his victims. What if civility, kindness and society are wrong, and those dark, primal urges you feel deep down are right? Malvo probably asked for Lester's soda when they met to test him, to see if Lester would be submissive so he could dominate him, influence him, tempt him. Maybe he recognized in Lester's eyes the monster he was capable of becoming, or the fact that Lester didn't outright say no to killing Hess showed Malvo that deep down, Lester wanted this. Malvo saw evil potential in Lester, so did the deed, and then essentially put the blame on Lester when they next meet at the diner. He wanted Lester to own it, to be accountable for it, so he started to feel comfortable going down a dark path. Maybe in that very first meeting, the two men saw themselves in their counterpart. Lester seeing the alpha predator he was too afraid to become, and Malvo seeing the wolf hiding in sheep's clothing, who only needed a prod to start baring his teeth. In the diner scene where the duo talk, Malvo comes off as playful and tongue-in-cheek until Lester becomes angry at the suggestion he killed Hess, and brings the law into the conversation. At this point, Malvo gets genuinely angry.
Who said anything about a court of law? I just mean...
Which extinguishes the brief rage and confidence Lester had. But that rage was there all the same, and Malvo saw it, and he took hold of it, bringing Lester's anger back out, but directing it to others around him instead. Malvo lets many potential victims go, usually good-natured people like Gus, who he probably perceives as weak. He's a predator who is capable of recognizing other predators, worthy targets, and he hierarchizes, like letting Gus go, knowing he was not a predator. It's like a bear throwing back a fish that is too small to eat, and maybe that's one of the reasons why he wanted to kill Lester towards the end of the season, because he now saw him as worthy prey, a potentially good addition to his collection. Speaking of collections, the man walks around with a case with tapes of what appears to be previous victims. When he first listens to Lester's conversation with him, it seems he's looking for clues or something, maybe seeing if he can set Lester up with the cops. But it soon becomes apparent that these tapes are previous victims of Malvo who he has turned into monsters, and he seems to be getting off of listening to their lives crash around them over and over. Maybe there's 50 more Lesters out there that Malvo has created, and it's his sick hobby to wreck people's lives and record their breakdowns. They show him listening to another tape at one point, and it sounds like someone saying, "You said those things, put those thoughts into my head," and then seemingly kills himself. It seems like he's an expert at putting disturbing animalistic thoughts into people's heads, making them go against the flow of society. He chooses targets who have a weakness inside them that he can exploit, so they self-destruct for his own amusement. So he didn't help Lester, he targeted him. Lester is probably a pet project for him, a side mission, and the elevator scene implies he's happy with his progress and envisaged going around with Lester, doing mischief together until Lester hit him. Malvo seems genuinely disappointed, and funny enough, when he goes after Lester, Lester actually beats him, catching him in a bear trap. Malvo, the Dr. Frankenstein, created a monster that even he could not put down. Lester used the same tactic that Malvo used to get out of the hospital. In other words, feign weakness and innocence to trap Malvo, and Malvo let his guard down, underestimating Lester, which is why he lost the battle. He always knows what he's dealing with. He's a predator at the top of the food chain. But with Lester, who had transformed, he simply didn't recognize the new Lester. He's a very interesting character, Malvo, and he's made more compelling with his human traits, having a sense of humor, getting frustrated, making mistakes. He also clearly has a big ego, with him unwilling to give Gus the satisfaction and smiling at him when he is shot to spite the man. Malvo once told a story about a bear that got stuck in a trap and bit or clawed its own leg off and died a while later in a stream, saying it died on its own terms. And this is pretty much what happens to Malvo himself in the end, who gets caught in a bear trap, escapes, and dies on his own terms. So he may have died, he may be out of the game, but in many ways, Malvo actually won in the end.